The wife of Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, this is Ginni Thomas, admitted that she actually didn't have any evidence of voter fraud when she had lobbied Mark Meadows to get Mike Pence to not certify the 2020 election. So now we get this, of course, with her interview with the House committee investigating the attack on the Capitol. So there's a lot here, including her having some regrets. So let's get through it. Now, in this interview that was released on Friday, Ms. Thomas admitted that she knew absolutely nothing. Quote, I can't say that I was familiar at the time with any specific evidence. I was just hearing it from news reports and friends on the ground. Grassroots activists who were inside of various polling places that found things suspicious. Oh, yes, very suspicious. Yes. I don't actually know what I'm talking about or know how these things work, but I found it very suspicious, because random YouTube video. Okay, great. Because of, let's be honest, there were issues with some polling places because the infrastructure is ancient and never or almost never gets upgraded properly because there's no funding for this infrastructure. So that said, she was asked later by Republican committee member Liz Cheney to confirm that she had seen no list of fraud or irregularities and said, quote, right, I know, I wasn't very deep in it. I admit it. I wasn't very deep. Mainly, I guess I was just talking out of my ass. When I texted Mark Meadows claiming that Biden was stealing the election. Of course, she does have an excuse for that. But I'll get to that. First, here's her text. This was on November 10th. Saying, quote, help this great president stand firm, Mark. You are the leader with him who is standing for America's constitutional government's the precipice. The majority knows that Biden and the left is attempting the greatest heist of our history. And yet, you had zero evidence to back that up. Yes, but I had feelings, you see. I didn't have facts, but I had the feelings. Many, many feelings. It turns out your feelings are not evidence. No evidence at all. And again, she knew it. She didn't care. But let's get to her excuses, right? First of all, regret. Quote, I regret all these texts. I was just clearly emotional. It was an emotional time. I was probably just emoting. Really? I was clearly with Mark Meadows somewhat. Now, among things that Thomas had wrote as well were her frustration about the whole coup, initial support for Sidney Powell, a later embattled Trump lawyer who promised for months to release the Kraken, which we know was a floppy fish, dead fish, of supposed evidence of the widespread voter fraud and criticism of Vice President Mike Pence sent after the January 6th Capitol riot. Thomas told the panel that she was unclear what she meant by a coup. I didn't know what I was saying. I was just really emotional. I had the sad. So, okay, for me, that makes me think that she was really appealing to conservatives with that statement. Why do I say that? Because there's a lot of conservatives that believe that women shouldn't be in positions of power and that you shouldn't take them seriously because we're too emotional. And I think that she's making that argument. I can't say for certain, but that's what it sounds like to me. What can you say? I have a feeling that she's, again, making the argument that, I'm me as a woman. I get so upset that, I said things that I didn't mean. You can't really trust it. That I say I wasn't really serious. I was just emoting. Right. Okay. Yeah. When she was, again, promoting a coup attempt. Now, she also had repeated her claims that there is a wall between her and her her conservative activism, and Justice Thomas, her husband, on the nation's highest court in the land, and repeatedly denied discussing into the post-2020 election cases with her husband, and claimed that he's simply uninterested in politics. Really? 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 Is that where we're supposed to believe that Clarence Thomas is not interested in the politics in this incredibly conservative Supreme Court? May I remind you that Justice Thomas was a lone vote against releasing these very text messages from Mark Meadows concerning his wife. Not interested in the politics at all. Sure. Right. Now, the closest she came to acknowledging any political conversation with Justice Thomas was a reference to her best friend. Backing her up on November 24th, Thomas had just texted Meadows that she was considering leaving politics, quote, "If you all cave to the elites, your husband is a Supreme Court justice. You are a member of the elites." I don't know if you know that. And then her excuse, though, is that she had told the panel that she didn't remember the conversation she had with her husband. Quote, "I wish I could remember, but I have no memory of the specifics. My husband often administers spousal support to the wife that's upset, so I assume that's what it was. But I just wish I could remember, but I was just so hysterical." Oh my God. I mean, seriously. That's ridiculous. Excuses. Again, she used her access to Trump's inner circle to try to convince them to try to steal an election. That's what this is. So now Thomas said that even though she didn't see any evidence herself and still went forward with pushing Mark Meadows, texting Mark Meadows to try to help, right? She was listening. She said, well, I was just getting this information from my friends. I was getting it from my friends in right-wing media. Really? Like, who? Well, got a couple of examples. Fox News. Donald Trump, who was spreading this big lie without evidence. Steve Bannon. Even at Sean Hannity. Again, Sean Hannity, among many others, that were spreading the specter of voter fraud. Oh, it's voter fraud everywhere. So much voter fraud. Now, interestingly enough, Hannity, as I mentioned, Hannity knew there was no evidence and didn't even actually believe in the big lie. He admitted this during a deposition that he didn't believe it for 1 second. Donald Trump's allegations of voter fraud. Didn't believe it, not for 1 second. But now at the same time, Hannity said something very, very different to Lin Wood and had continuously blasted it out to his audience. So if she's listening to Sean Hannity, which is very likely, very possible, then, well, she would be getting that message of mass voter fraud. We've got evidence of mass voter fraud. It's there. There's so much evidence. That never materialized and never will. And it didn't just get blasted out to Thomas. It also got blasted out to people who would eventually storm the Capitol building. And that's why it's important, by the way, to talk about the media, conservative media on this. Now, whether you believe her in not being deep into this enough to know, I'm very, very skeptical of it, by the way. It does bring up a good point. When Fox News, or when I should say conservatives tune into Fox News, and they see nothing but chyrons of mass voter fraud. Democrats are stealing the election. A lot of them think, well, I trust Hannity. I trust these figures. I trust, Tucker Carlson, Laura Ingraham. They're telling me the truth. They're the only ones telling me the truth. And the truth just happens to be whatever I want to hear. Well, obviously I have to do something. And understand that this news station has massive reach. Tucker Carlson is the most watched conservative host on, in the world. Massive reach. And so when they are knowingly going out there and telling lies to which they have no evidence for, that has an impact. And the people that they reach are not just regular people who are watching at home. It's also could be the wife of a Supreme Court justice who has inroads to people. She believed in this conspiracy theory, even knowing she didn't have the evidence and certainly didn't need to have any evidence. That's also important. And, still, even without any of that, decided to lobby Trump's chief of staff into pressuring Pence into trying to help with the plot to steal the election. And understand, this is how far it goes. This is how effective conservative media is. And, of course, another example of how Fox News is dangerous. They don't care about facts at all. And they will mislead people in order to do the job that they set out to do, which is to protect the Republican Party and the donors specifically as much as possible.